Keeland, every moment matters.
And welcome to the TDN Writers Room. In fact, it is our TDN Writers Room Derby wrap-up edition. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the Thoroughbred Daily News.
I am Randy Moss with NBC Sports, catching up on my sleep.
You probably deserve it. You probably do. That was a lot of hours in front of the camera. I'm Zoe Cadman with First Racing and First TV. Glad to be here on a not so sunny Tuesday here in sunny California.
So before we get started, just want to let you know, we're going to do things a little bit differently on this week's TDN Writers Room podcast. There were so many great stories, and we wanted to cover as many as possible. So not only do we have our normal Gainesway guest of the week, which is, of course, Cherie DeVaux. Who else would we possibly have on after her historic win as the first female ever to capture the Kentucky Derby, which she did with Golden Tempo. We also have the winning jockey in Jose Ortiz. We also have the winning co-owner in Daisy Phipps Pulito. So you're going to be watching our main TDN Writers Room podcast here, but look for what we're calling TDN Writers Room Podcast Overtime. And that'll be easy to find on our website and YouTube and whatnot, where we'll do the interviews with Jose Ortiz and Daisy Phipps Pulito. And believe me, they're very good. We've already recorded them and well worth watching. So we are going to cover this Kentucky Derby and all the stories from A to Z, and to give you everything you need to know about what a great race it is. So, like I said, a little bit different format this week, but follow along, and I think you'll really enjoy everything we did. So I'll start with you, Zoe, because you are a fellow female, and you must have been thrilled with Cherie DeVaux. What a great story. And I know that a lot of times, and you probably yourself during this career wanted to say, I'm just a jockey. I don't want to be known as a female jockey. But for Cherie DeVaux, 8 years into her career, to have risen to the level that she has, where she's up there among the 7 or 8 best trainers in the country, no doubt about it, to win her first Kentucky Derby as a female with her first starter. That was the story of the Kentucky Derby. And damn, it was a terrific story.
And I think a lot of people are looking for stories. And you're right. It was a terrific story. And just the story in of itself with Cherie, you'll hear from her a little bit later on. It took her almost a full year to win her first race. So she's been training 8 years. She's really been winning races for 7. So she has come a long way in a short period of time. Her first Derby starter for the famed Phipps stable with those cherry red silks. I mean, this is something that you make movies out of. It was just honestly absolutely fabulous. And the whole story with her and Daisy Phipps, and then Monique Delk as well, who's the racing manager for St. Elias Stable. Just really a great story. And that is something that we look forward to, is the stories in racing and being able to tell those stories to the best of our ability.
Yeah, it's not very often you get this kind of a storyline from owner, trainer, and jockey.
Correct.
Right? I mean, you've got the connections, the ownership connections you pointed out, and Cherie becoming the first female trainer. And then you've got Jose beating Irad on the wire to get his very first Kentucky Derby win. Yeah, I talked to Cherie, I think it was Wednesday morning, and she said, look, I said, look, obviously Golden Tempo is going to have to take a step forward. And she said, I understand that. And she said, he will. So there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that he is going to take a fairly sizable step forward. She said he is training better than he ever has. He's more aggressive than he's ever been. He looks better than he ever has. There's no doubt in my mind he's going to run his absolute best race. Whether that's good enough to win, I don't know, but he will improve and improve sharply. And she was exactly right.
So I don't want to take anything away from Golden Tempo, but Randy, I'll start with you on this one. So many Kentucky Derbies are determined by the pace. I know we've seen faster paces of this Kentucky Derby, but they went 22-3, 46-2, and Golden Tempo was last in the first call. And you know what? That's where he wanted to be. There was a pace meltdown, and it affected a lot of horses in this race. And actually, you could say logically, you don't want to be last in any horse race. But when they're going that fast, it is the place to be. Horses are up front, are just exhausted from that pace. He's getting a good trip from Jose Ortiz. How much did the pace play into his victory? I think I think there's no doubt that it was a major factor in his win.
Oh, yeah, I think it was a major factor. But I think, honestly, the Kentucky Derby pace was probably the average Kentucky Derby pace that you see in a year. I mean, typically you do have a fast pace in the Kentucky Derby. I mean, this year it probably seemed a little more dramatic because Six Speed set the pace at 38-1. So Happy, not really bred for 1.25 miles, was right behind him. Then you had the Japanese horse, Denon Bourbon. You had Pavlovian at 50-1. You had Wonder Dean at 27-1. You had, they were long shots mostly that were up front. And so they figured to back up, given a fairly solid pace. Golden Tempo was where people expected him to be, which was last. That's typically the way he runs. Renegade, that wasn't a surprise that he kicked the way he did. Really, the only surprise to me was Ocelli. When they turned for home, I'm like, all right, the Japanese horse is probably going to win. Look at this. And I think the Japanese still haven't quite figured out how to ride the Kentucky Derby. When they do, look out. He was much too close to the pace. And then all of a sudden, here comes the maiden as, Selly's going to win. And then, Renegade's going to win. No, Golden Tempo's going to win. It was just like one by one by one by one. But yeah, the pace definitely had an impact.
Yeah, it for sure did. A couple of things to mention. The pace, the top 3 finishes at the first call, 18th, 15th, and 17th. After half a mile, 18th, 15th, and 16th. After 3/4 of a mile, 18th, 16th, and 15th. At the head of the lane after a mile, Golden Tempo is still 14th. A long, long way back. There goes the old adage. When they turn for home, the Derby winner is usually within 4 lengths of the lead. Well, that's out the window, isn't it? I mean, who'd have thunk it? And they didn't go any faster than they always go. Just a lot of them went quick together. So I think that's where it came from, just being able to sit that far back. Renegade got screwed at the draw. It seemed like So Happy and Mike Smith kind of caused a little bit of a domino effect coming down that just shifted everyone over just a little bit. And that's all you need. Mm-hmm. Just a slight tip of the domino. If you're in the one hole, you get crushed. So, you'll hear from Jose Ortiz a little bit later on that he was surprised to see Renegade in front of him and his brother. He's like, I'll just follow him. He's one of the best horses in the race. This is great. Thank you very much. So he just followed him. So, that was the pace meltdown that we had. And one other thing that I think is fantastic from a breeding perspective, Keeland. Keeland, they released him for stud duty earlier on in his season because he was having a little bit of trouble. We don't know if he's going to come back next year into the breeding season. He picks up his first Derby. His very first one. He was 3rd in the Derby many, many moons ago. In fact, it was a Keeland trifecta. The winner by Keeland, the 2nd place finisher out of a Keeland mare, the 3rd place finisher by Connect, who's by Keeland. So Keeland finally got his day in the sun. And I thought that was one of the biggest takeaways for me. And
Keeland probably should have won the Kentucky Derby too. Yeah. He got shuffled back a little bit in the first part of the race. So yeah, that was nice.
So I don't mean to be the one raining on Golden Tempo's parade.
But you're going to.
I'm going to, because I don't think he was the best horse. And, we had talked about this with Jerry Bailey on the show before. We had talked a lot about the one post, and it was a major factor. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he got slaughtered at the start. He got bounced around something terrible. Irad had to really, gather him up before he got his momentum. From that point on, Irad really rode a good race. He was able to get him back into the hunt. Now, the other thing too, though, is because he saved ground and stayed on the rail, he had to swing very wide in the stretch. Did he get into miles and miles worth of trouble? No. But when you lose by a neck and you have that kind of trouble at the start, Zoe, I think it cost him the race.
You could also say this. If he'd have broke sharp and with the rest of the field, would he have been too close to a hot pace?
Perhaps. That's a good point. Yes.
I mean, it could have saved him. It could have hurt him. I mean, there's no question it did hurt him. But he broke so well, he'd have been in that top flight. No one from that top flight finished in the top 4, 5, 6. They just didn't. They were in the bottom 10.
It's a good point, Zoe.
So one other thing, I always get very interested in the odds in the Kentucky Derby. And Randy, you guys, I felt sorry for you you're trying to explain the odds with comments, and so-and-so's 5-1, and then someone else is, and then all of a sudden, wait a minute, that horse is now 6-1, and they changed and the other is 5-1. So it finally, further ado, was 5.05 to go off of the favorite. Renegade was second at 5.65. But to me, the crazy betting was on, and Zoe might disagree because I know she loves the West Coast horses, but why on earth was So Happy 590-1? And I'm going to give you guys a theory, and you're going to think I'm nuts. I think it had a lot to do with his name.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is a race where, remember, probably, I mean, they don't bet big money, but probably 50, 60, 70% of the people that bet on the Kentucky Derby bet on one race a year. And, Golden Tempo, that doesn't mean anything, but So Happy, can you get a more cool name? Everybody wants to be So Happy. I think it was the $2 bettors that fell in love with the name, and maybe a little bit fell in love if they even knew the story of Mike Smith and Mark Gladden and his wife passing away. He's a good horse. He should not have been 5-1. He should have been about 12-1. So that's my take on that. And my theory, people were playing names.
So you're saying that Pavlovian and Robusta and Intrepido doesn't have the same ring as So Happy.
Exactly. All right.
Well, I don't, I can't really disagree with that because, I mean, how many of the $2 bettors knew the story of Mark Glatt and his wife and fell in love with that particular storyline? Probably not all that many. Within the industry, yeah. So, I mean, what other reason would there be?
I think he had a pretty healthy sheets pattern as well, numbers-wise. Was a big play.
Didn't look at him, though.
He had a very good progressive numbers-wise. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to take a big jump forward, and he was too close. Simple.
But it was hard to keep up with the odds because I remember saying something to Mike Tirico. Commandment was the favorite, and then just one flash later, he was the fourth choice.
Right? Yeah. I felt sorry for you guys. You're trying to keep up with this, and it's changing literally every 10 seconds.
Yeah, it's part of the storyline of the race, right? Yeah, the public was having trouble figuring it out.
Oh, one other storyline that I'm glad that we can put to bed. 3/4 shoe on Renegade didn't seem to dissuade him whatsoever, and then cracked heels on Golden Tempo. So,
there's your exacta. Your all-foot exacta.
Exactly. I thought that was great.
All right. So that's a wrap up of segment 1. We're going to get to our Gainesway guests of the week here, Cherie DeVaux, in just a second. We've got to hear some messages from Keeland. We'll also find out who the fastest horse of the week was from Randy Moss. And when we come back, we will get into more things related to the Kentucky Derby. So stay with us here on the TDN Writers Room podcast.
Duran to remind you that the TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeland. Now, Keeland sales graduates kicked off a banner weekend with the winner of the Grade 1 Kentucky Oaks, always a runner, being a 2024 Keeland September graduate. Let's go through some of the other ones, shall we? On Derby weekend, Keeland grads also enjoyed the following graded stakes success. Classic Q won the Distaff Turf Mile. Deterministic took Aqueduct's Fort Marcy. Yellow Card won the Churchill Downs Turf Sprint. He was very good in there. Imagination the Lady was the victor in the Edgewood Stakes. Catherine Marissa won the Modesty. Corporate Power took down the Ali Sheba. Shall I go on? One more. And On Time Girl won the 8 Bells. What a great weekend for Keeland graduates. We'll be right back after this message from Keeland.
We do this so your granddaughter can work on a farm someday. So the stands will still be packed in 50 years. That's why we come to work every day, obsess over every single detail. Because the story of racing is written one moment at a time. And the future of our industry deserves nothing less. Keeland, every moment matters.
The fastest horse of the week brought to you by the Fast Sires at Windstar Farm. Life is Good was obviously very fast, and now he's also off to a fast start at stud. Over the weekend, True Blessing became the second 2-year-old winner for Life is Good, and Wagley, who was his first winner a couple of weeks back at Keeland, became his first stakes winner. Life is Good is now the only first crop sire in the U.S. to have a black type winner. Life is Good is Into Mischief's fastest son, and he stands at Windstar for a fee of $60,000. The fastest horse of the week might be a nice trivia question. I'm not sure many people would come up with this answer, but it happens to be T.O. Elvis, the Japanese phenom that ran away with the Churchill Downs Stakes on the Kentucky Derby undercard Saturday with the Beyer speed figure of 108. All you had to do was watch the video in Japan, and you knew that in his recent races, T.O. Elvis showed a remarkable closing kick. But how would you know that he would be fast enough to beat Knightsbridge and Cornucopian and Imagination and Disruptor? Well, he not only beat them, he blew their doors off in the Churchill Downs Stakes. Our fastest horse of the week, straight from Japan, T.O. Elvis. And I'm not going to say Elvis is in the building. That's low-hanging fruit, and I've already said that.
And who else would be our Gainesway guest of the week? No suspense here is, of course, Cherie DeVaux, the winning trainer of the Kentucky Derby with Golden Tempo, and, of course, the first female ever to win the race. Cherie, I know you've had a very busy week. I've been appearing all over the television dial and saying lots of nice things about horse racing. Good for you. How you doing? And are you still on cloud nine, or are you just in a state of just exhaustion right now?
To be honest, it's none of this has the enormity of it has not sunk in. It's been a whirlwind. Wasn't really expecting to be whisked off to New York City and go all over different studios and get to be a representative for industry. It's been fun, but I'm averaging about 4 hours of sleep a night. So I am looking forward to regular bedtime and getting some semblance of normalcy. It's not going to be normal, and I have to acknowledge that something happened and my life is going to be changed forever. So,
and Cherie, I've been covering racing for a long time, and I've talked to a lot of females who recorded first. And Julie Crone comes to mind. Linda Rice has done some fabulous things. Rosie Napravnik has had some great accomplishments. A lot of them kind of have downplayed the whole woman angle. But I really, from watching you, unlike Randy, I wasn't at the Derby, but watching all the coverage and watching you on these morning shows and whatnot, I think you are relishing that. And you think that it is, in fact, something special that you broke through a great barrier here to become the first female trainer. Could you comment on that, please?
Well, I don't make my gender as being a female trainer my whole identity, but I do acknowledge that being a female in the racehorsing world is a big deal when, big things happen. I'm a person that just has always done my own thing. You guys have known me for quite some time. So if I can just be myself and be true to myself and that inspires others, then why not take advantage of that platform for others, not just, myself.
You had some very nice things to say to Donna Brothers in the walkover about how much she's inspired you since you were little. So what do you think about young people right now, that maybe young girls that may now see you win the Kentucky Derby and you may become their role model? How do you feel about that?
It's an honor. It really is, to be able to do something so profound that puts me in that light, especially for others that might not be the everyday racing person. I've social media. I still haven't caught up with all of my messages, especially my social media inboxes, but I have seen a lot of videos of just people that have watched it and have been touched, and it's so meaningful and it is touching. If it's not, then I need to go get my heart checked to see if it's blackened or if it's still beating.
Well, Cherie, congratulations. I thought the lead up to it and the aftermath was absolutely terrific. And you're quite right. Much like myself and other women jockeys in the past, we wanted to be known as jockeys and not women jockeys. You want to be known as a horse trainer and not a female trainer. But leading up to the race, we saw a fabulous bit on ABR. You just look so relaxed. You've been in a lot of high profile races. Do you think it helped you knowing that you had like a 25-1 shot? Or did you have an inkling in the back of your mind that he could be something really great? It's your first Derby starter and you win with your first starter. Take me through the lead up to it and how you were feeling watching him actually cross the line in front.
Well, I was very confident in Golden Tempo. He has trained so well since throughout the winter, but especially we freshened him a little bit, just gave him a little bit more time. And physically, he looks fantastic. He's kind of always a little bit on the heavier side. He really started to trim up. And then the week of the Derby, he was like, from being a horse that kind of is like quiet as a church mouse to train and goes through the paces, we're coming off the track and he's nickering at the pony trying to audition for his hopeful next career. So it gives you a lot of, I had a lot of confidence. Now with his running style, everything basically has to fall into place for him to get there, in a field of, at 18 horses, 17 in front of him. But, it didn't really, it wouldn't have crossed my mind. I didn't put pressure because the Derby's the Derby and you have to go there with an open mind and not, it wasn't the odds. It was just that, hey, it's my first Derby. We're going to go here. We're going to have fun. And, it's a stressful week. So I just made the conscious decision to say, like, we're just going to have fun. And I had my sister there. I had my best friend Elise there and Reagan was there and Olivia, who works with me. So there's no sense in getting nervous. It's not going to change the outcome of the race. So why not just play some music, sing along, as long as we're not disturbing Golden Tempo. He could not have cared less, except the singing was atrocious. But, why not just enjoy it?
I'm guessing you were probably thinking, okay, it's my first Derby. I'm going to enjoy it. The odds are we're not going to win, but if we do win, we'll celebrate in the winner's circle and then go out and have a nice dinner or whatever. Were you at all prepared for the aftermath?
No, I wasn't even prepared for the stretch run. And I just remember I was standing all week. I'd been standing in the winner's circle and the horses have all been running so well. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, everybody. We didn't have a horse that did not show up for us, which is fantastic. It's amazing. And it's credit to the team, but most credit to the horses. So I'm like, I'm just going to stand here, but you really can't see that much. And you especially can't see all the way up the stretch. So I see him coming and I clocked him right when they came out of the turn and I saw him making a run. And when he passed me in the winner's circle, he was just coming up to Renegade. And it's like a dream. I can't believe that he got there. And like, I collapsed thinking like, holy SH word, I don't want to get anyone in trouble. That just happened. And I was really proud of myself in that moment that I did not let one F-bomb out. That's when I was stunned. There was no curse words. There was no beeping on anything.
That's pretty amazing.
In all this talk about you being a female trainer, I think one other factor has been lost. And you've been doing this for 8 years. You're a baby in this business. And how does somebody who, there's obviously people that took 25, 30 years and some great trainers to either win their first Derby or have never won a Kentucky Derby. How did you come so far so fast? And I imagine, I don't know if you're going to win more Derbies, but I can guarantee you're going to be in this race for many, many years to come with many, many more starters. So with what you've done with your career, how did you make this all happen so fast?
Well, I don't think it's fair to say, how did I make it happen? It happened. In the beginning, we were just perseverance paid off. The first year we almost went a full year without winning a race. So it was almost 7 years of training of winning races before we got here. I have made a conscious effort and thought in the beginning of my career that my core principle is going to always be to put the horse first. And I'm going to surround myself with clients, with a team, with the whole support team with that in mind. And I think that to do this and to be successful, the horses have to be the priority and the care of each individual horse. But you have to have the clients behind you. And I'm so grateful for, we have the St. Elias, the Violas, and the Phipps, but every other client that's supported me in this journey, I'm just so thankful for.
So now you've been doing God knows how many interviews and podcasts and TV hits and all this stuff. And look, I'm in the TV business. I was in front of 20 million people doing the Kentucky Derby telecast. Cherie, if I was sitting on that Today Show couch, I probably would have been as scared as SH, right? You handled it so well. What was that like?
Honestly, it was a lot easier than I thought, but I think it's just the delirium that is been my state of mind for the last couple of days. But I just don't think about it. But I'm so amped up about the race that being nervous about going on a TV show, like I get to talk about something that was really awesome that not a lot of people have done. So, but to be fair, every podcast, every interview I've done, the hosts are like fantastic. They're so down to earth. They're not intimidating, and I'm not intimidated easily. But I will say, Al Roker asked for my picture, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Yes, my picture. Please grease the door jams to get me out of here."
So talk about the dynamic on, the Viola's St. Elias stable and the Phipps stable, because you've been around a long time. You've been watching races for a long time. What does it feel to you to be connected to such history, especially with those red and black colors being your first Derby winner and your first start? I mean, that has to send the mind churning, doesn't it?
It most definitely does. Of course, I'm going to forget this horse, but I apologize. Daisy had sent me the Phipps family. She represents the Phipps family, and Monique Delk represents St. Elias. So just for the sake of this conversation, so I don't want anyone to get upset. But so Daisy had sent me a filly, and she was a bit of a project, and she got loose behind the gate at Gulfstream, and she, eventually we just. She went out to be a broodmare instead of running. And Daisy says, "I promise you next year I have better ones coming." And Golden Tempo, when he came in, there wasn't a lot of fanfare. Barry Eisman's going to get tired of me saying that the one horse that won the Derby was the horse that he said, well, he's not going to get you excited when he breezes. But, he's a horse. He actually is a very good workhorse now. So it's kind of funny, but he just took some time. But it's an honor. I remember when the first horse came in and I was getting the silks, I didn't have my own set of silks at the time. So I was borrowing the silks, and I just thought, how amazing of an honor is this? Because there's not a lot of trainers that are in this position, and it will not be lost upon me, the magnitude of that.
Just so you probably already know this. You talk about a full circle moment. The Phipps stable traces all the way back more than 100 years ago to the Wheatley stable, of Gladys Mills Phipps, a female. So it's sort of bookends now, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Daisy's obviously Daisy Phipps Pulito is helping run the family stable, and it's really a historic moment.
It is. I just wanted to say that I'm Mrs. Phipps, Daisy's mother. She's sick. She has pancreatic cancer, and we all know that in those moments, anything you can do to rally around a person to make them excited about something and take their mind off of what they're going through in the day-to-day, it's a privilege to be able to give the family something positive to talk about, and just to make their days a little bit lighter instead of so heavy.
Wow.
Cherie, I know we're not going to pin you down today on Tuesday while we're recording this about your decision on the Preakness. You've told everybody you want to wait at least till this weekend. But of the 5,000 interviews you've done, I did hear one where I was impressed by your feelings about the importance of the Triple Crown and the tradition. And to me, that's kind of been lost among a lot of trainers, unfortunately. And I think that's one of the things that is upsetting about that racing, that maybe the Triple Crown does not resonate the way it used to. But whether you run Golden Tempo in the Preakness or not, clearly you believe the Triple Crown is something very special, and your respect level for it, from what I gather, is very high.
Well, it is. And winning the Triple Crown is not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be hard. You have to have a horse that can run these races back to back to back. And, we went through a drought for so long where we didn't think it could happen. And then it happened twice. So it can be done. I don't know the horses that have tried it. I commend Bob with Justify and American Pharoah for knowing his horses and know that they could handle that campaign. But every horse is different. Not every horse is gonna be able to handle that racing. And like Golden Tempo, the conversation we're gonna have is it's a 16th of a mile less. It's 2 weeks after he just put in his career top. So we're going to have to see how he is. And that might not be ultimately Golden Tempo is going to decide. But, there's going to be a lot of conversation between now and then in the next couple of days. And, just discussing, the pros and cons. And, if we want to try the Preakness, or do we want to go to something we just won at 1.25 miles? And I actually was thinking even before the Derby, I kind of wish that the Belmont was 1.5 miles, because I would love to see him going that distance as well, and just kind of see where he fits in that spectrum of distances in racing.
Very cool. I got one question for you, and it's about him, because I saw him training at Churchill, and I was like, my God, he's massive. He's just this big, hulking son of Keeland. Do you weigh him? What does he weigh?
I have not. I don't have a scale around me. But believe it or not, he was a lot bigger. And I remember the first time he ran, and I made the comment. I said, geez, you are a big, chunky boy. And then it kind of trimmed down. But we really pressed on him. He had an easy work, and then he had 2 really tough works, stamina building works. Where it had the half miles recorded, but we saw the one with Jose where he kept galloping out, a double gallop out. And I asked him to go 5/8 from the half mile pole with a double gallop out. And he responded well, and he tucked up, and he kind of, everything else fell into place where he just started to really feel his oats. And he couldn't look any better. His dappled from head to toe, his coat looks great, and he's happy. He was eating everything, all those markers that we look at, he was hitting.
The thought that he broke his maiden at 6 furlongs in December is just
right?
Unbelievable now.
It definitely is. But I would like to get in his head as to why he wants to be a deep closer, because he does have speed. He shows it in the morning. But it's almost like, okay, I'll let you guys do the heavy lifting, and then I'm just going to come and cruise around here, because he's got a nice cruising speed, and then he can really finish strong and has a nice turn of foot.
Cherie, you've developed this relationship with Jose Ortiz, and it looks like the combination of the two of you has just been magical. And what a weekend he had, of course, winning the Kentucky Oaks as well. But what has he meant to your success? I mean, he's pretty much become your stable jockey, and I think it's fair to say that when the two of you teamed up, that has been something that has moved your career even more forward. So what is it about Jose and Cherie DeVaux that they make such a winning combination?
Jose is invested in our stable. He comes out. If I ask him at the last minute to come and work a horse, he does. We had a day when something happened in New Orleans, and I needed an extra rider, and he came in on his day off and was galloping horses, like just to help our team. So he has a vested interest, and I think I commend Jose because he's a unique rider. He can ride horses with all different styles. He's not just a speed rider, a come from behind or a turf rider, So sometimes riders get pegged and it's probably just who they ride for, but he rides all kinds of horses. He fits the horses. He works with the horses and gives positive feedback. And he really is part of our team. And when he came to Kentucky, I was lacking a rider that could do that. That was, he could ride different types of horses and ride for me full time. It was hard because other jockeys, they ride for a lot of different trainers and, so you don't get that consistency. And I think the consistency for Golden Tempo and, we'll say like a More Than Looks, that really is key on a horse that's developing and moving forward. That's just not here right now.
Well, Cherie, if you think it's been a busy week after the Derby, if you win the Preakness, you haven't seen anything yet, by the way. So buckle down. Again, I know you'll make the right decision, but of course, the racing world would love nothing more to see you take a crack at the Triple Crown and then perhaps come into Belmont Park, Saratoga, of course, with a real chance of making some serious history. Once again, I know because I've been watching all the minutes of your day that you've given away to the media. So we so much appreciate you giving us a good 20 minutes of your time on this Tuesday afternoon. Congratulations again on an historic win in the Kentucky Derby. Keep up the good work, and thanks for being our Gainesway Guest of the Week.
Thank you for having me on.
Guest of the week, Cherie DeVaux, came to you courtesy of Gainesway, home to the Stallion Muth. And today we're giving you a look at some of the first foals by Muth, now arriving across the bluegrass. They're a good-looking bunch, but don't just take our word for it. Here's some quotes from some of the experts, such as Gainesway's Brian Graves, who says, "We have seen a large quantity of highly rated physical spread over a large range of farms. This horse is stamping his foals." How about Patrick Masson of Green Lantern Stables, who says, quote, "To say our Muth foal out of Bellamaker is awesome is an understatement." And Joe Reeves calls them gorgeous, athletic, and classy. Muth, a Grade 1 winner as a 2-year-old and 3-year-old, stands at Gainesway for a fee of $30,000.
Say hello to Muth.
The single most important factor in predicting sire success is those who have consistent, high-class form, and it's even enhanced if they have that form as 2-year-olds as well. By our calculations, Muth has the #1 chance of sire success of any of the 30 or so sires that retired to Kentucky in 2025. He has the credentials that we're looking for when we predict sire success.
Well, I watched the Kentucky Derby from my couch and enjoyed the coverage from Randy Moss, Jerry Bailey, and that whole team, Nick Block. And Randy, I tell you guys do an absolute excellent job. And I'm going to say that every time. It's not because you're on a podcast. You guys are just terrific how you cover this race. And it's a joy to watch you. But Randy and Zoe, you were the ones who were there. What was the vibe like? What were some of your takeaways from the day?
Go ahead, Zoe.
I thought it was great. I mean, the whole lead up to it, any news station you put on was the weather. It was supposed to be the coldest Derby day in 30 years or something. I was wearing a dress. I had long johns on under my dress and leggings, all prepared for it. But it was a great day. I didn't go on Oaks Day, Oaks Night. I know that cleared out pretty quickly. We'll get to the big generation in Handle after that and see if that's a good move going forward. But Oaks Day for me was fantastic. Obviously we went with Potente and did the walkover, and it didn't rain, and it was a lot of fun. There was a great vibe. It was a very safe few days of racing. A lot was made of a lot of regulatory vet scratches, good, bad, or indifferent. Nobody wants to see that happen on one of the biggest days in racing in the sport. So nothing happened. Kudos to everybody for making it a good, safe few days of racing. I had a lot of fun. I really did.
So I wasn't in the walkover. I wasn't in the paddock. I wasn't on Millionaires Row. I was chained to a desk, to an NBC desk, pretty much all day long. I can give you a little bit of behind the scenes stuff on NBC. Now, it was a year ago that Mike Tirico had a peanut allergy and was a scratch after the first couple of segments of the Kentucky Derby, and everything had to be shuffled, and Mohamed Fareed had to come up, and I took a brief turn as the host. And anyway, so Saturday, now with that in the rearview mirror, we think everything's okay. Jerry Bailey and I always ride in the car together all the time. We sit next to each other. We're like 1 and 1A. So we get in the car at 6:30 in the morning, leave the hotel. We're on the way to the racetrack. And Jerry says, by the way, I might have to pull over and throw up. And I said, okay, all right. What's going on? And he said, I've got a kidney stone. Ooh. And he had been plagued by those as a jockey because I guess of dehydration, of, having to dehydrate himself so often to make weight. Apparently that can cause kidney stones. And he had quite a few pretty severe kidney stones as a jockey. Well, he got to the track and wasn't feeling any better, went to the jocks room to get in the whirlpool, which sometimes helps, came back, was even worse, had to go to the hospital. So we did from noon until I want to say maybe 3:00, 3:30. Jerry was in the hospital being treated. Wow. And it was just me and Ahmed, and then me and Mike Tirico. But the tough guy that Jerry is, I mean, he got he got some meds, which didn't seem to affect him. And
he was in no pain then. Good man.
We had completely scratched him. And then the next thing you know, there he is. There's Jerry. And he did a great job. But yeah, so things like that going on behind the scenes were pretty interesting.
Well, that's a good story. You're not going to get anywhere else. And as we mentioned, once again, the NBC Churchill team just makes this a bigger and better event every single year. I don't know how they do it. Right. It never peaks. And there were 19.6 million viewers, broke the record, most of the most watched Kentucky Derby ever, up by 2 million. And again, it's just, a lot of things in horse racing aren't going right, but nothing is going more right than the Kentucky Derby that just gets bigger and better every year. Of course, Randy now is going to put on his NBC Sport hat to promote that. So just worth noting. But let's get to another story during the week. And it's been a story in Kentucky that has been ongoing well before the Kentucky Derby, especially at Keeland, where they had just a slew of vet scratches. So there were 5 scratches of horses during the Kentucky Derby. 2 of them had nothing to do with the vets. The Mark Casse horse was scratched, and also Full Effort was scratched by their trainers earlier in the week. But there were 3 vet scratches. One of them, Great White, was the one who flipped before the start. It was a no-brainer. I mean, I think there's probably set rules that if a horse does that, the horse has to be scratched. But there were 2 others that raised controversy, and it seems we can't get through a Derby. So they, for Mike Rapoli, actually, they didn't scratch his horse. How about that, Mike? You finally got one into the gate. But the first one was the Kenny McPeak horse, Right to Party. And he pitched a fit. He was on social media. This isn't right. The horse is fine, etc. And the second one was the Puma. And I'm going to try to say this as politely as I can, but the story we got from the Delgado camp was that insinuated that they scratched the horse because they found a swelling in the leg due to a skin infection. However, the horse was listed on the official Equibase scratches as a veterinary scratch. So there were at least 2 veterinary scratches that let's forget again, but Great White, even that the trainer said he's fine. He's going to run on the Preakness. But this is such a tough subject, Randy. I can't venture an opinion on this because I don't know the first thing about this. I can't look under the hood and know the first thing about whether a horse should run or not. I heard rumors, as I'm supposed a lot of you did, that Right to Party was not doing particularly well during the race. But Randy, have they gone too far, Or are they doing a good job protecting these horses and keeping horses off the racetrack that might endanger themselves? It's the $64,000 question. And it's something that is especially in Kentucky, where they seem much more willing to scratch horses than they do in virtually any other state. And horsemen are not happy about it. Your opinion?
All right. Well, I mean, I've got a lot of opinions here. First of all, the last thing you said, you can look at the statistics for veterinary scratches. And going back 5-6 years ago, you had the other states way up here and Kentucky way down here. And now Kentucky has steadily risen to just catch up with the rest of the states. And horses are no more likely to be scratched in the state of Kentucky than they are in New York or California or Florida or anyplace else. They've just caught up now to the others. We didn't see a death in the Kentucky Derby or the Kentucky Oaks or the Breeders' Cup last year. You look at the statistics and horse deaths are down markedly, and I don't think that's an accident.
I agree with everything that you say. And, there were a few people moaning about it. I'm like, listen, it's the biggest race in the world. Would you rather have a horse scratched in the morning, or would you rather see one break down in the afternoon? And you're right. There's going to be wrong scratches. There's going to be right scratches. We don't know. I heard a couple of trainers, I'm not mentioning any names, talking about, I'm going to go to New York. This is too hard here. Really? You're going to go to New York because you think it's going to be easier to get by the vets there? But I'm not going to argue with any scratched horse whether it should run or it shouldn't run. The fact that we had no breakdowns over the course of the two biggest days in the sport was a very good thing in my mind.
Those were some interesting insights and very well said from my two colleagues. So it's a little bit too early to know specifically who's going to run in the Preakness. Cherie DeVaux, as expected, this is being recorded on Tuesday, and she didn't have an answer for us about whether or not Golden Tempo would run. Probably won't have an answer until this weekend. I don't think he's going to run. I just, because I don't think that's what trainers do anymore. I don't think they believe in running back in the Preakness. And, what's going to happen if Golden Tempo doesn't run? Crude Velocity, who won the Pat Day Mile, Bob Baffert says he's 50-50. He would be, he'd think he'd be the favorite in the Preakness, even if Golden Tempo did run, but he's 50-50. Randy, if we have the potential here of getting, how do I put this, but a really lousy Preakness. I mean, let's hope Golden Tempo runs and saves the day. And then maybe if Crude Velocity runs, it'll be a very interesting Preakness. But if we get a Preakness with 0 Derby starters, and Dave Grenning from the Racing Forum, who does as good a job as anybody reporting on this business, has said that Golden Tempo is the only Derby starter whose connections are giving any consideration to the Kentucky Derby. So if the race at Laurel is a real crap race, is that going to be what finally gets this thing solved? What you and I have been screaming about for the last couple of years, that you cannot run these races 3 weeks, 5 weeks apart. And also, I think we don't know what the immediate rights holders are going to do. Who's going to get the rights to the Preakness? That could play a role into it. But in some respects, could people be so embarrassed by this race? And I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's a great Preakness that they'll finally say, we got to do something about this.
If 0 horses from the Kentucky Derby run back in the Preakness, does that surprise anybody?
No, but that's the point.
Shouldn't.
Yes,
I know.
That's terrible. Absolutely
Exactly.
terrible.
Exactly. The Triple Crown's broken. It is. And this is not breaking news. It's been like this, and it's getting worse. Bill Mott just recently commented about Chief Wallaby when asked if Chief Wallaby might be a contender for the Preakness. He said, quote, "Nobody looks at the Preakness."
Yeah.
What does that tell you? I mean, I'm not going to continue, well, I will. I mean, it's ridiculous that it hasn't been changed. And if this is the impetus, if this happens and it's the impetus finally for it to change, then maybe it'll end up being a good thing. I hope so. 3 weeks is not going to make a bit of difference. It's going to have to be more than that. But right now, that seems to be the only concession that that New York is willing to make. We'll see.
All right, we're going to take another break. We're going to hear from the PHBA, the Kentucky Bred commercial. We'll also play. We come back, we'll wrap things up and look at some of the other topics that took place last week at Churchill Downs. Stay with us here on the Writers Room Podcast.
The TDN Writers Room also brought to you by the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association, a.k.a. PHBA. We'd like to remind you of some of the important dates coming up this spring and summer. May 8th, Friday, May 8th, is the date for the Pennsylvania Bred Annual Champions Banquet, held at the Inn at Mendenhall. I've been there. In Chadds Ford, PA. This year's guest speaker is the voice of NBC's Kentucky Derby Preakness and Breeders' Cup announcer Larry Colmus. Next up, Friday, May 29th, Penn Mile Day at Penn National, with the 5 p.m. start and 2 Pennsylvania bred stakes. Next date to circle on your calendar, Saturday, July 18. That would be Pennsylvania Day at the races at Parks, with over $1 million in purses and awards restricted to Pennsylvania breds. If you'd like to get in on some of these Pennsylvania bred happenings, you can get more information about the PA Bred program by visiting www.pabred.com or by calling Brian Sanfratello at 610-444-1050.
The Pennsylvania breeding program is the best program in the country. The Stallion Awards, the owner bonuses, also the restricted races and the stakes races for Pennsylvania breds. Last year, 321 Pennsylvania breeders earned Breeders' Awards. 22 Pennsylvania breeders earned over $100,000. We have the best program in the country. Take advantage of the fantastic program that we have.
Learn more at pabred.com.
With some of the fullest fields in the country and quality racing year-round, there's never been a better time to reap the rewards of breeding and racing in Kentucky. Purse money in Kentucky is at an all-time high, as is average purse per race, outpacing California, Florida, and New York. Kentucky Breds. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
So where do Kentucky breds shine? Of course, on racing's biggest days, such as Oaks Day, always a runner. Won the Kentucky Oaks for owners Doug Scarborough and Three Chimneys Farm and breeder Three Chimneys. And Kentucky breds, of course, had a prestigious double, because on Saturday, it was Golden Tempo making history for Cherie DeVaux. Just talked to Cherie and the owner breeders, Phipps Stable and St. Elias Stable, who earned a $50,000 KBIF bonus for breeding a Kentucky Derby winner. Kentucky breds, breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
Well, the Kentucky Oaks was run for the first time during the evening. The post time was about 8:47. The restaurateurs were not happy about that. They were a big story in the New York Times from our good friend Joe Drape about how all the restaurants were so upset about losing their business on a Friday night. I can kind of understand that. But always a runner came through for Chad Brown and gave Jose Ortiz the first of his Oaks Kentucky Derby Daily Double. And Randy, as I recall on the podcast last week, and I'll give you credit for this, you had some great insights from your discussion with Chad Brown. And I believe you picked this horse, correct me if I'm wrong, or made her a major contender based on what Chad told you. Could you rehash that?
I loved her. Absolutely loved her. It's nice to be right for a change. Didn't Zoe and I bet 2 bottles of wine on that race? I don't remember.
I don't recall that. No.
You don't? Okay. Okay.
No, we got it on video. We're going to go back and watch.
I guess I must have dreamed that. I suppose. Okay. No, it was a fantastic story. I mean, the horse had pneumonia. So did Emerging Market, ironically, but the horse had pneumonia as a 2-year-old, and it was touch and go for a while. And so that's what delayed her career debut. And she broke her maiden at Tampa and got a very interesting ride and was just in a canter, basically. Then got sick again after that race, and I think missed 20 days. And Chad completely scratched the Kentucky Oaks off his dance card. Just there's no way we can make the Oaks. And then suddenly she begins training pretty well, and she had 2 really good workouts back to back. He said, So he looked at the gazelle, and the gazelle seemed to be coming up kind of light. And he said, well, okay, maybe I should give her a chance. She's not 100% fit. She's probably 70% fit. So he vans her all the way up to New York, and she wins the gazelle and gets a speed figure just as good as all the leading contenders. And so, she's going to take a big step forward. So I thought it was kind of pretty much a no-brainer there. And fortunately, she ran like that. I wish I had meaning behind her, but I didn't.
Terrific race by her. She looked really good training all week. And it was actually a gun runner exacta. So we saw Keeland shine bright in the Kentucky Derby, and gun runner having the first and the second place finisher. She was much the best out of a half sister to a Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf winner by the name of Structor. Not really ambiguously named. She's by gun runner out of Always Karina, hence the name, Always a Runner. Yeah, I could have kind of thought of that one up. But given Chad Brown an Oaks win there, very cool. I thought Explorer ran big to hang on to be 4th. She was right up there in a hot pace. Counting Stars had looked good training all week. She ran very good as well. So kind of a formful Oaks I liked meaning. I thought she'd hit the board, and she ran exactly where I thought she'd run, but Always a Runner, much the best in there by far.
I heard they were going to name Always a Runner So Happy, but the name was already taken.
So Randy, it was a late night for you and the NBC team, but the all the numbers came back, and I have not seen the ratings, but I'm sure they were through the roof because the race was broadcast on the USA Network the prior years, which is doesn't have the gravitas of NBC. Handle was way up. It was from those respects a big success. Which leads to the question: do you think they'll ever try to move the Kentucky Derby to prime time?
I don't think that's imminent. Who knows though? I mean, the ratings for the Kentucky Oaks quadrupled the previous high rating, right? And it was Churchill Downs' idea. I mean, I know some people were saying, "Oh, NBC, putting it on prime time." Churchill Downs came to NBC with the request, "Hey, can you put this race on prime time?" They believed, rightfully so, that most of America, as sports fans, have no idea. They all have heard of the Kentucky Derby, but your casual sports fans that don't follow racing that much probably had no idea that the Kentucky Oaks was the second largest attendance day in American racing the last 4 years, that it's as huge as it is. And they wanted to, showcase the Kentucky Oaks on prime time under the lights, which looked phenomenal, and show people around the country how big the Kentucky Oaks Day actually is. And also at the same time, they thought, and I think they were proven correct, that it would promote the Kentucky Derby the next day even more. Someone tunes in at prime time. They're not a huge horse racing fan. They see the Kentucky Oaks. They watch it. It looks cool under the lights. We're promoting the Kentucky Derby the whole time. Oh, yeah, the Kentucky Derby's tomorrow. Yeah, I think I'll watch the Kentucky Derby. And it was up 11% in handle from the year before, or ratings. The Derby was. So I think it was a double win for Churchill Downs in that regard.
Anytime the handle's up 20%, that's huge. I don't know the exact figure, but up 20%, absolutely astronomical for the Oaks. Now, if you're working in one of those barns, it's a long day, long night, long day the next day. I know I saw a picture, I think exactly 25 minutes after the Oaks was run, there was not a soul in the grandstand. Being at the hotel, people were coming back to the hotel at 7:00 before the Oaks. There was a mass exodus of people leaving the track before the race was even run. But the fact that it is all about the money and that people were gambling and the handle was up so significantly means it's liable to stay there.
The Pat Day Mile, that was a race last week on our preview that I think both you and Zoe and maybe even Jerry Bailey as well, said was the race they were looking forward to.
Oh, yeah. What a race.
Much, if not more so. What a marvelous race with two just terrific horses. Crude Velocity and Englishman. Crude Velocity, Bob Baffert. Englishman for Cherie DeVaux. I liked Englishman. He ran his race, but he just wasn't fast enough or good enough to beat Crude Velocity. And it was only a mile race, but Baffert, as the trainer of Crude Velocity, has said he's thinking of the Preakness, Zoe. I don't see why not. He needs to stretch him out at some point. If he doesn't stretch, I know, and Bob's never been afraid of the 2 weeks. He doesn't have that same mentality some trainers had where it's just absolutely something they're not ever going to do. I think this horse can win the Preakness. I hope he runs. I mean, he to beat the Englishman the way he did, this is one hell of a horse.
2206, 44-1, 108.13, new stakes record, 133.87. I'm not sure Bob thought he'd have to run quite as fast to win the race, to be honest. When he had the Preakness in his rearview mirror, I don't think he believed that the horse had to set a new stakes record to win the race. He was much the best horse in the race, but anytime they run that hard and that fast, it does take a little bit of a toll. And I know he won by 2 lengths going away and looked like a good thing. He's not an overly big, robust horse. He's a beautifully well-balanced little horse by Bo Liam from his first crop. And I don't know what was wrong with him. They paid $12,000 for him as a yearling in October, the Fasig-Tipton sale. 2 months later, they came back and let him go through the digital sale for $3,000. Omar Ramirez picked him up for $3,000. He worked 20-1 at the OBS June sale last year, and Bob picked him up for $250,000 from the first crop of Bo Liam.
All right, so enough for all this happy talk here, because I am not happy about something that happened at Churchill Downs.
Not so happy?
Not so happy.
Not so happy.
They should have named the next horse. Yes. What happened in the Churchill Downs Stakes with the win by T.O. Elvis, the Japanese horse, just shed a light on a problem that I believe is going to cause and is already causing horse racing substantial problems, and it's only going to get worse. A lot of people said that the CAW players, it's Derby Day. There's $8 zillion in the pool. They're not going to impact things. We saw one of the most dramatic effects of the CAW players, perhaps of all time. And it came with this horse, T.O. Elvis, who was 30-1 on the morning line. It's really not part of the story. The line maker at Churchill Downs does a really good job. He just messed this one up. The horse should not have been 30-1. But he goes into the gate at where's my notes? He goes into 12. The gate basically at 12-1, and was going to and would have paid $27.64. The gate springs open. He wins the race and pays $13.74. The exacta going into the gate was going to pay $122.77. It paid $54.22. The daily double was paying $63.82 and wound up paying $26.80. All that information is from Marshall Graham, who was just so good at keeping track of this. This absolutely stunk to high heaven. It was a terrible look for horse racing. And it reminded us once again that the guys that are out there trying to play this game and want a fair playing field are getting screwed. And the CAW players are driving people out of the game. I estimated that on the win bet alone on T.O. Elvis, they won $1.6 million. And that doesn't even begin to account for the money that they must have won on the exacta, the daily double, and maybe pick fours, pick threes, et cetera, that they played. Now, what are we going to do about it? Nothing, because there is no solution. The racetracks are not going to turn down the billions of dollars these people bet. And in the meantime, this thing is getting worse and worse and worse, and the regular players are leaving the game. And this was one of the most egregious examples I have ever seen of this phenomenon. It's not good. It's not right. And it's going to continue to make major problems for this sport. and there, frankly, are no solutions. The game's painted itself into a corner. Congratulations to the CAW guys who took home millions of dollars. And I feel bad for the people that bet on T.O. Elvis, who thought they were getting a $27 mutual, only to get a $13 mutual. The whole thing stunk to high heaven. So it took up a lot of time there, but it was still a great Kentucky Derby day. But if you had to point to one thing that really soured the afternoon, this was it.
But how do you really feel?
And I didn't bet on the horse either. So if I had bet on the horse, you'd really hear me go off on this.
All right, look, I am not defending CAW play, but let me just ask you some questions. Suppose, I think Marshall estimated that $260,000 was bet on the horse in the win pool by the CAWs. Like that's kind of what he thought. So suppose instead of a last second dump that they had bet their $260,000 based on whatever method they use, their algorithm, which they didn't have for Japan. I'll tell you why they bet on the horse in a second. But suppose they had done it beginning at 10 minutes to post, and the horse winds up going off at 5-1 by the time, they walk up to the starting gate. How would you feel about that?
Feel much different. And here's why, Randy, because when you I know it's parimutuel, it's not fixed odds. But we all grew up in this industry expecting that if we bet a horse at 3-1 going into the gate, he went off at 5-2, we're not too upset about it. Maybe go off at 2-1. You didn't see that too often. Wouldn't be that upset about it. And he goes off at 7-2. We're delighted. But the game, you can't base your bets having no idea whatsoever what the prices are going to be on these horses. You have to have a general idea.
Well, I know the optics are not good. The horse, by the way, should have been 5-1 all along.
I don't necessarily disagree with that.
One other point about CAWs, and I don't really strongly disagree with anything you said, but it's not like they're absolutely kicking ass and beating the game without the rebates. Okay. Let's just assume, and I may be wrong about this, that at the end of the day, their bets, excluding rebates, they're 3 or 4 percentage points up, which is a good score. Okay. I made a bet a few weeks ago on a horse that I really liked, and he was 9-2, and I watched him win, and I was really happy, and he paid 7-1. Because the CAW players crushed another horse in the race, and they were wrong. You never hear about that. You never hear people talking about, oh, man, I got way more money than I thought I was going to get. and they're not right all the time at all. All you hear about are the sob stories, and I get the frustration about things like T.O. Elvis when you think you're getting one price and you get less. But it works both ways also. It's parimutuel. Like you said, it's not fixed odds.
Randy, I could talk about this for a whole nother hour.
I know. We both could.
I'm not going to say a word.
Okay. Because you were the one that, Zoe, I understand. You were the one pumping all the money in on T.O. Elvis. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm clean here.
Well, I'm sitting here. Yeah, okay.
All right.
The TDN Writers Room Work of the Week is brought to you by First TV. Now, while all other 3-year-olds were off having fun at Churchill Downs on Saturday, the now 7-year-old gelding Sumpter was on the work tab at Santa Anita, breezing 3 furlongs. In 36-4, he may have got some unwanted company down on the inside, but that's him under Cisco, having a very, very nice work. It was actually his first breeze since his 5th place finish in the American Stakes at Santa Anita. He had won the San Simeon on March the 16th in his prayer start for trainer Richard Mandela. We'll be right back after this message from First TV.
Be a smarter better with First TV, the best horses. With thousands of exclusive morning workouts. All at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart. Bet smart. With First TV. All the thrills. fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
And the TDN Writers Room is also brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. West Point has a message that I think it might be more effective for me just to read. Big congratulations from West Point Thoroughbreds to Cherie DeVaux and David Ingordo on Golden Tempo's Kentucky Derby win. West Point has been fortunate to be involved with Cherie since she went out on her own and now campaigns a strong group of horses in her barn. From West Point, it's a thrill to see Cherie succeed on the sport's biggest stage.
Guys, I thought that was a terrific show, and I want to remind everybody that there's much more available on all the TDN outlets of YouTube and on our website this week. Is because we also
I thought you were talking about NBC. Sorry.
Yes, we also have a new enterprise. We're calling the TDN Writers Room Overtime, and you can catch that with our exclusive interviews with Daisy Phipps, Pulito, and Jose Ortiz on what we're calling the TDN Writers Room Overtime. And I hope we watch from this podcast from beginning to end, and also catch the interviews with Daisy and Jose. So,
Zoe, do we get paid? Zoe, do we get paid for two podcasts here? Is that the deal?
It should be 3, if you ask me. Man, we'll have to. Why don't we unionize? I want to be the union rep. God damn it, we got to get paid more when we do this stuff. That's for damn sure. Anyways, but great show. A lot of great insights as always. I want to thank my co-hosts Randy Moss and Zoe Cabin, and I want to thank from this podcast, the Gainesway Guest of the Week, Cherie DeVaux, who, of course, pulled off the historic win with Golden Tempo in the Kentucky Derby. I want to thank the people that work behind the scenes and the real stars of the show because they make it look so good when it comes out. And that is Sue Finley, Katie Petroniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Aaliyah LaRocca. Well, we have plenty more to talk about next week as we'll know more about the Preakness Stakes. Hopefully, we'll get some stars out of the Kentucky Derby. We'll keep our fingers crossed for that. Thanks for tuning us in. Thanks for watching. And we'll talk to you again next week.